Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Tonight in the studio with me is Robbie Rip Rains. Doc is not feeling well, and Steve had to work, so you just got to put up with the two of us tonight. Robbie, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. How are you, brother?
Oh, not too bad. All things considered, you know what they always say. Any day you wake up on this side of the dirt, it's got to be a good one.
Yeah. And today is a pretty good day.
You
Maybe
want to explain why?
You want to do it now? Or you want to wait till then?
We can talk about it now and then hit it more later.
Sure thing. I'm getting in the truck after a little bit after the show, and I'm taking a little road trip. You know where I'm coming to, or where I'm going, DA?
I think you're going to Missouri, aren't you?
I'm coming to Missouri. Yeah.
And mayhem will ensue.
Yep. Got the truck all packed up today with all manner of goodies and things that go boom. And we'll have a certain person meeting us there on Saturday to do some kind of fun stuff.
We can't give away too many details right now, but we definitely are up to something. So we'll let you guys know more as we can. But it's going to work out to be pretty freaking cool. I think you guys are going to like it. But as for tonight, we're going to be talking about America's haunted highways. There are stories all across the country of ghost cars and haunted hitchhikers. People hitchhikers that thumb a ride and then aren't there when you look in the back seat. People seeing shadowy figures just outside their headlights as they drive down highways. There's a lot of them from all over the country, and I think every little town has some story, at least some local legend about a haunted section of road.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's about every city or small town has got a crybaby bridge legend. It seems like.
Yeah. There's a similar legend just outside of Springfield, but we're gonna hit some of the more famous national ones, and we're also going to be talking about local ones from not only from around where Robbie lives, but from around where I live. So I hope you guys will enjoy this one. I think it's going to be creepy and fun. Robbie, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let me pull that one back up. All right, there is a highway in Greenville County, Highway 107, and the story goes, this is a highway that runs towards the Blue Ridge Mountains, towards the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The story is a guy named Larry Stevens, and there's a mill in Greenville called the Stevens Plant. I don't know if he was part of that family, but he was flying his own plane, so it's a possibility that he was involved in that. But supposedly the plane crashed somewhere along the roadway, and to this day people report that ghostly hitchhiker thing that you're talking about. They'll see somebody hitchhiking, and they'll pull up, stop, let them get in the car, and then they're just gone. They just vanish. And that's been going on ever since his plane crashed. So that's kind of and it's supposedly it happens like only late at night. It's never like before midnight, I think is what the story said. Kind of spooky. Somebody just vanishes.
Yeah. I think probably the most famous one that I've heard of, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this one, was what they called Route 666, which was an actual interstate. They changed it to, what was it? They changed it, I believe it was to where was it? Route 491. It's still, the highway's still there. It winds through like 4 states, like Utah, uh, part of Colorado. I think it's Arizona. No, yeah, it's Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. Goes from Monticello, Utah to Gallup, New Mexico. And some really weird crap has happened along that road. I mean, some really bizarre stuff from ghostly vehicles. Numerous people have cited a burning truck, a semi that's supposedly coming down the road on fire. There are people that have seen, and this is one that would freak me out. They've been driving down the road and seen a guy walking along the side of the road and hitchhiking, and they'd pass him. And a mile or so down the road, they see the exact same guy, and they pass him again. And lo and behold, another mile or so down the road, there he is again. I think at that point, I'm probably rolling the windows up and speeding. If I get a ticket, I get a ticket.
Yeah, that's
Kay Bauer says she saw that movie with Lou Diamond Phillips. Yeah, I did too, unfortunately. That was a really cheesy movie, but the highway's a legit thing. There, even now after they've renamed the highway, there's still people reporting seeing all kinds of crazy stuff.
There's been a lot of movies based on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they call it the Devil's Highway, and there's a whole bunch of different, let's see, what was it? The Devil's Highway, the Highway to Hell, Satan's Highway, and it is just a big stretch of nothing. I don't know if you guys have ever been out through those states, but this is a long stretch of highway with literally nothing out there between towns. And you talk about truckers seeing the black dog. There have been reports of people saying that their cars were chased by large black dogs that they thought were hellhounds. Just all kinds of really weird stuff on this road. Cars with no drivers, people that would like have a flat tire and have to pull over to the side of the road. And by the time roadside assistance got there, it was just the car. Nobody was ever found. This is a really bizarre, almost cursed section of road. And I think they kind of invited that when they named it Route 666.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of forethought in the name of that road. Who cares? Let's just name it this.
Yeah, close enough. We'll just call it that. Sorry, I was reading something Miss Naoma messaged me. I think Miss Naoma maybe she's going to jump in. So I'm going to send her a link. She's got some creepy stories to add. So
she's always got creepy stories.
Heck yeah. What was that one you were telling me? You said there's a little town there, right there in South Carolina you're never going to?
Oh, Blacksburg, which is just about 30 minutes up the road in Spartanburg County. There's like 3. I looked up the top 27 haunted roads in South Carolina. Cherokee Falls Bridge, Rock House Road, and White Wolf Road are all listed in Blacksburg, which is right next to Cherokee County. So, can we read a couple of them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Starting off with Cherokee Falls Bridge in Blacksburg. This place is where the legend of Booger Jim comes from. It's reported that he died on this bridge in 1979 when his crazy wife Becca hung him from the bridge with jumper cables. Nice. I don't think she took the name jumper cables in the right vein. Hung him with jumper cables around 9 p.m. They say if you stop and call his name 3 times, you will hear him call back, but you won't be able to make it out due to the fact that his throat was crushed when he was hung. Very nice. Yeah. Well, let's hang him with jumper cables. Then the next one is Rock House Road in Blacksburg. Rock House Road runs alongside Kings Mountain Battleground. It said that a long time ago there was a family that lived in a rock house, which still stands to this day and can be toured one day a year. This family had a daughter who was kept in the cellar during the day because she was different from the rest, and at night she would be given a candle by her father, who would let her out let her out of the house to roam around. The story says that one night she went farther than normal and her candle went out and she was found dead. They say if you light a candle in the darkness, her face will appear. That'd be spooky.
That would be cool as hell. You and Johnny should go over there and check that out.
Yeah. We may have to. Like I said, I really didn't know half of these things. I mean, obviously I know where Blacksburg is, but we may have to make a road trip. And this one is White Wolf Road. White Wolf Road happens to be near White Wolf Hollow near Kings Mountain State Park. There's that one again. According to history, there have been 2 tragedies that have happened here. The first was when a group of people killed a man and his wife, and it said that you can see the wife still roaming around in her white dress. That sounds a lot kind of like a Crybaby Bridge type thing, because that's usually what you hear from that. Then the second tragedy is that in the 1960s, a man who was shot execution style near his truck, and then the truck was torched. They say you can still see his truck lights driving down the road. So that's 3 good ones right there in the same county or city.
That is a really cool area. I mean, you could spend some time in video over there.
Oh yeah.
There's one right here in Springfield. It's in town. It's over by a park called Phelps Grove Park. They call it the Bride Under the Bridge, and supposedly there was, the local legend is, oh, there's Miss Naoma, but the local legend is there was a woman killed in a car wreck on the eve of her wedding. And it says that the newly married couple lost control of their vehicle, resulting in a fatal crash that claimed both bodies. But supposedly you can drive by that bridge at night and see her standing under the bridge. Now, I've driven through that park many, many times and never seen anything. But there are lots of people who claim they have. But then again, paranormal really not my thing, so I might not be the guy to go look. But I know several people who've said I've seen it and scared the hell out of me. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it is, these local legends exist for a reason. Miss Naoma, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, hear you
Okay.
just fine.
Okay,
You're always welcome.
I forgot to test everything before I jumped in, and all of a sudden I started talking and thought, oh, he may not be able to hear me. But hey.
Well, fortunately, we hear you just fine. Awesome.
So how are you guys tonight?
We're good.
My Crybaby Bridge story. Well, first, ow, that hurt. First of all, let me explain something, because I come from a family of ironworkers and they get really upset when we start talking Crybaby bridges. All bridges are made with a certain amount of give. Some have more than others. The ones that have more give, all you have to do is roll just a little bit of your vehicle out onto either end of that bridge deck, and it will sink enough to make the car go across. Just saying. I have to say that. If I don't, my brothers, the ironworkers, will all come and haunt me, and my father will come back and haunt me, and I don't want that. So, but where I'm from, there is a Crybaby Bridge. Of course, there are hundreds of them, I think, across the country, and most of them have the same basic backstory: a school bus full of kids or something along those lines. This one has 3 stories that goes with it. First of all, the Crybaby Bridge is in Mercer County, Illinois, and it's out in the country. The original bridge was built by the farmer there who built the bridge across, I think it's the Edwards River. And he built it there to get his cattle from one pasture to another. That bridge eventually wore out and was torn down, and a public bridge was put in its place. No one knows exactly where the original Crybaby Bridge was, but we all assume that they are. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in Warren County. I said Mercer County, and my son's correct. It is Warren County. It's just one county farther south than the one I said. But anyway, so this Crybaby Bridge is your standard dust the tail of your vehicle with baby powder and pull out onto the bridge and put it in neutral. Unseen hands will push you across the bridge, and when you are out to the middle of the bridge, and when you get home, you'll find the little kid's handprints on the back of your vehicle. All of that can be explained away. It really can. But the cool story about this particular Crybaby Bridge is my favorite one of the three. Was there was possibly even a descendant of the farmer who built the original bridge. He liked to go down there and fish. There was a nice catfish hole down there. And sometimes in the evening, he'd go down there and fish at night and just sit by the water and enjoy himself. And he was walking down the road to get to the bridge, and along comes a carload of teenagers. They were out partying and doing what teenagers do. They didn't see him in the road. He didn't hear them coming because he was kind of getting hard of hearing, and they hit him and killed him. To this day, they say that if you're there on a moonlit night, because the moon was full that night and they should have seen him, and you're in the road, he'll come and warn you to get out of the way.
Really?
Yeah. And there are people who have seen or even heard him call when they're down at Crybaby Bridge. Now, there are two other stories involving the same bridge. One was of a young woman who had fallen in love with the town Romeo, and she had let him go a little too far, and she got pregnant back in a day when that was the worst sin a woman could commit. Apparently not a man, but a woman. And she got pregnant, and he refused to marry her. Well, she had the baby, and she was ostracized by her family, kicked out, living nowhere to go, nowhere to live. She had her infant baby in her arms, and she was standing on the bridge, and she was crying, and she was desperate, and she didn't know what to do. And in her sorrow, she let the baby slip out of her arms and into the water. Seeing what she had done, she jumped into the water after the baby, and she and the baby, of course, both drowned. And they say that you can hear her sometimes crying in the water, looking for her lost child at night. And then the third story is, of course, the traditional school bus full of kids. The bus driver, it was a very rainy year, and the bus driver lost control because you have to kind of turn to go down to this bridge, and he lost control and the bridge careened off into the water. But that is in Warren County, Illinois. It's our very own Crybaby Bridge.
There's a similar story like that told around Branson, Missouri, but there's not a bridge involved. Supposedly, if you put baby powder on the back of your car and you put your car in neutral, that the ghosts of these kids that supposedly died in a fire will push your car up a hill. Now, I've never done it, but it's one of those places that I'm planning on going and filming and seeing if I can scare the crap out of myself or something along those lines.
The other common place for that to happen is on railroad tracks. Kids supposedly that were killed when a bus was hit by a train will come along and push you across the hump of the railroad tracks. Now, I can't explain those either up a hill, or if there's no bridge deck to sink naturally, I have no explanation for that. But I do think that that's a really neat story with the fisherman, that he'll come and warn you to get out of the road.
I've heard of phantom warnings on long railroad tracks that ghosts of like old brakemen and stuff would stand up there with lanterns to warn trains. I've heard a lot of stories about that. There's probably a whole show on that too, about haunted railroad stuff, because I really want to dig into the legend of Lincoln's death car, the train car. There's a really cool story there, and I want to probably do an entire one on railroad related hauntings and monster sightings. But we'll do that one for another time. But it just kind of got me sidetracked there.
We to stay sidetracked, because God knows I don't want you on the train or on the track. That's not my goal in life, ever to keep you on track. And remember when we did the Halloween episode a few years ago, I covered one of those railroads where the man was supposedly killed by a disgruntled former employee.
That's
And now,
right.
yeah, I can't remember where it was at now. I know it was I think in Western
I remember the
Arkansas.
story. I think it was in Arkansas. You did a lot of
Yeah.
Arkansas stories because
Yeah.
there's such creepy stuff in the Arkansas mountains.
Yeah, not including the people. But I can say that because I have family there. My family's from Arkansas, so I can be mean about them. And you know what they say. The governor's mansion burned down, got the whole trailer park.
Very accurate.
Yeah, Bill Clinton's presidential museum actually looks like a trailer. Oddly.
That's hilarious.
Not surprising.
Yeah, it looks.
Technically, the Werewolf Springs story is kind of a haunted highway story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's where it started.
Yeah, it happened on a road.
Mm-hmm. A road that is still there to this day. Give me about 3 seconds, and well, give me more than that because I'm slow to type these days. But I had to think for a second. The name of the road is Highway 70.
Highway 70. Won't you tell us the Werewolf Springs story again? I love hearing you tell the story.
Oh, that is such a cool story, isn't it?
You tell it so much better because I've tried talking about Werewolf Springs. I just don't get the details right like you do.
Well, and I think that I've kind of developed a reputation for that one too, and it's such a great story. It post-Civil War. Oh my goodness, I'm in the wrong screen. That freaked me out for a second. I looked up and I was not talking because I was on the YouTube screen. It just delayed a few seconds. I'm like, why am I grinning when my mouth should be moving? Anyway, Werewolf Springs. Post-Civil War, there was a farmer who was headed from Burns, headed towards a town west of Nashville, just outside of Nashville. And I can't remember for sure what town that was. But he was going home in his wagon with his servant. It was nighttime. They were traveling to get there. They were going to travel through the night to get home, whatever they had to do. They were done with the whatever business they had gone that far west to do. And they began to notice that there was something pacing them in the woods. Now, they could tell that this wasn't a four-legged animal. They could tell that this was on two legs, but they couldn't quite figure out who it was. And they began to think or worry that it might be bandits that were going to get them and rob them. And so the farmer starts to pick up the pace in the wagon, and whoever or whatever it was managed to keep up with them. He was keeping pace with them. Now, the scary thing there is the fact that whatever it was didn't get on a horse. It was still on 2 feet, and it was keeping up with them. And the faster they would go, the easier it seemed to be for this thing to keep pace with them. And they began to get really scared, almost to the point of being panicked. And the farmer's pushing the horse, and it's keeping up, and they're getting more and more afraid until they finally reached a point of being hysterical. The farmer jumps off the wagon this way, the servant goes off that way, or the other way around, whichever the case may be. And the farmer rolls under the bushes on his side of the road and listens in horror as whatever was chasing them got a hold of his servant and ripped him to pieces. And the farmer heard the whole thing. He could hear the servant screaming and crying and begging for mercy, but he couldn't do anything about it because he had nothing to defend himself with. Probably if he had a gun, he'd left it in the wagon. And so all he could do was lay there and listen until finally the screams died away, and he knew that the man was dead. So he laid there till daylight. Finally, he crawled out from under the bushes, and he went to the nearest town, and he told him about his servant and what had happened the night before. And they took a posse out there, and they looked all around, and they could never found not so much as a piece of clothing from the servant. They found nothing. Whatever had gotten him had taken him away with it. Well, as time passed and more of these types of incidents began to happen, the people in the nearby towns decided they were going to put together a posse, and they were going to hunt this thing down, and they were going to find it, they were going to kill it, and they were going to get rid of it forever, and nobody would have to worry anymore. So a group of men, they went out into the woods. Now, the southern half of what is Montgomery Bell State Park now on the very southern tip, that was a farm owned by the Hall family. And there's a spring on that farm that is where the name Werewolf Springs comes from. The actual name of the spring is Hall Spring, but the nickname of that spring is Werewolf Springs, and that's because all of this happened in that general vicinity. So they got to the clearing next to the spring, and they took a goat and they staked it out, and they all got around the woods and the bushes to hide, to watch, to see what was happening. And they had lanterns, and they put the lanterns out, and it was, of course, a cloudy night, or partially cloudy night, and they sat there quietly, and the clouds went across the moon, and everything was quiet. And then the moon came out and they could see the goat. The goat seemed to be a little tense, but it was still there. And then more clouds came across the moon and everything was quiet again. And then the moon came out again, and the goat was beginning to pull and be very, very nervous. And then the clouds went across the moon again, and they could hear the goat bleeding and crying, and the moon came out again, and there was this thing, and it was standing there. It was eating the goat. It grabbed the goat, and of course all of the men lifted their guns and they fired. They emptied their guns right into this thing. I would like to think that they were in a semicircle or they were all on the same side of the clearing, because I just have this vision of a Looney Tunes cartoon where
they're all shooting each other.
Yeah. Bugs Bunny holds up a sign that says duck season and they go bonkers. But neither here nor there.
Or the Hatfield and McCoy cartoons.
There you go.
27,000 rounds fire. Nobody gets hit. Kind of like an episode of the A-Team.
Exactly. So they end up, of course, emptying their guns into this thing, and the clouds come across the moon again. Somebody gets their lantern lit, and by the time they get their lanterns all lit and they get into the clearing, the thing is gone. The goat is gone. And I believe 3 members of the posse were gone and never found again, never seen again. Now, of course, over time, this becomes even more famous. And there was a big game hunter who decided he was going to come there and he was going to hunt this thing down, because if anybody could kill this thing, he could kill this thing. And so he goes down there. He takes a cabin that's right there by the clearing, right there by the spring, and he spends his days going through the woods and hunting and looking for tracks. In the evening, he sets up in the front window of the cabin and he's looking straight out at the spring, and he's watching and he's watching. And the first 3 or 4 nights, nothing. Doesn't see a thing. But finally, one night he's sitting there, and I'm getting all these messages. I have to make them go away. Okay. He's sitting there, and sure enough, this thing walks on 2 legs into the clearing. And it's not like anything he'd ever seen before. It looks kind of like a big wolf, but it's walking on 2 legs like a human being. It's covered in hair, and it's muscular, and it's actually very large. And he's thinking, I don't even know what this is. But he finally decides he's gonna, he takes aim and he shoots right at it and nails it. But it doesn't react. Now there's a sound that a bullet makes when it hits something. He knows he hit it, but it didn't take it down. And he's using big game guns here. I mean, we're not talking a pea shooter. This is the guy who goes out to Africa and hunts elephants and water buffalo. He's not using small ammunition. And yet this thing didn't even no effect on it whatsoever, except that it really pissed it off. And it comes charging towards the cabin, and the big game hunter's like, oh my stars. And he runs up the ladder to the loft, and he gets up in the rafters over the just in time as this thing rips the door off the cabin and comes inside. And for the rest of the night, this thing is underneath him, pacing back and forth, jumping up and trying to grab him, and almost getting him on several occasions. Once in a while, he can sort of manipulate his gun and take a shot, and he's hitting this thing, and nothing is hurting it. Well, it's getting on to be about sunrise, and he realizes that he's got 2 bullets left, and he's thinking to himself, he's going to take one more shot at this thing, and if that doesn't kill it, that last bullet's going to be for himself. So he goes to take aim for that one last shot. And about that time, the sun peeked out over the horizon. And the creature looked out the door and it saw the sun and it ran off. And he never saw it again. Of course, the hunter, he waited about half an hour, 45 minutes, and he tentatively climbed down out of the rafter, quickly packed up his stuff, and he left town. And he was never seen again either, but that's because he was sure that he'd finally found something he wasn't going to kill. Now,
be puppy chow.
That's right. Now, there have been a lot of stories over the years. There are a lot of people who will go walking, and Montgomery Bell State Park is a very well-maintained park. It's not anything rugged. You're not walking into a jungle there. They're very well-maintained trails. It's 3 ponds. There's a swimming beach. There's a golf course. There's a community center there. There's camping areas. It's very well maintained and managed. And so it's not like you're walking into the LBL where you can't see 5 feet beyond you into the woods. But there are people who go there who still hear screaming. They still hear it screaming in the woods around them. And there are people who go there who feel like they've been chased out of the woods by this thing, or it's followed them through the woods. And to this day, people still experience that. And the interesting thing is, around the southwestern edge of one of the ponds, I think of the southernmost pond, is some bluffs, and there are caves in those bluffs, and they have discovered in those caves bones. Now, most of those bones can be explained away because farmers, before that was a park, would take dead large animals up there to rot rather than have them rotting on the farm and stinking. But what they couldn't explain were the number of human bones they found in those caves. And that, my friends, is the story of Werewolf Springs.
I love that story.
I do too. I really do.
But that story just adds credence to what we've talked about with Dogman before, about them finding bones way back in caves.
Mm-hmm.
In a few cases, finding human bones way back in caves.
And of course, the proximity of Montgomery Bell to what's the cave system that's right up the road from me? Help me out.
Mammoth Cave?
Mammoth Caves. It's just, obviously, it's part of that cave system.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah. And so...
Especially now that they're saying that Mammoth Cave may possibly extend from Maine to southern New Mexico.
Yeah.
Nope.
Even if it didn't, I'm sure that would still be a part of that system. And I think that also would explain why they can go for long periods of time. We have a legend here. I live in Robertson County, Tennessee, almost said Kentucky. And we have a legend here called the Critter of Carr Creek. And it has been described as looking either like a hyena, or somebody even described it once as looking like the tiger, the Australian, not Australian.
The thylacine?
Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine?
Yeah, that's the one. And there's an old newspaper clipping I found that actually has a drawing of it. That's exactly what it looks like. But it goes away. It's like every 6 years or so that it appears. Well, it would make sense if it's going into the cave system and traveling elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, that's very close. I think it's only maybe 1 or 2 counties away from where Montgomery Bell is. So, all in the same area. And
again, the cave theory makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and John Bell, of course, of the Bell Witch fame, that all started when he took a shot at a strange-looking creature he'd never seen before. So
I forgot about that little detail.
Yeah. So, right outside of a cave, by the way. So, but anyway, I just recently did a video on Hitchhikers. Of course, I covered Mary, Resurrection Mary, because everybody does. But there were a couple of other ones that I thought were really interesting. There's one in talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
No problem. Resurrection Mary is a great story. That's up near Chicago, isn't it?
Yes. On the south side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story, but Resurrection Mary, and I can't remember how she died. But Red Sovine, the singer, did a song about her called "Bringing Mary Home," and apparently for years, and I don't know if it's still happening today, but for years after this girl passed away, people driving along the road next to the Resurrection Cemetery would see this girl in a white gown at the side of the road, and many times people would stop to pick her up and give her a ride, and she would always say, "I'm trying to get home." She'd give them the address. Well, even in the song that Red Sovine did, people would go pull into the driveway and look back in the back seat, and she wouldn't be there anymore. Well, the song actually goes on to say that after he picked her up, when there was nobody in the back seat, he went up and knocked on the door. And the parents said, yeah, it was 13 years ago tonight that she lost her life in a wreck down the road. And you're the 13th one that's been here bringing Mary home. It's a really creepy song.
There is Lydia's Bridge is what I was trying to remember. And the thing about Lydia's Bridge, forgive me, I feel like I'm going to sneeze.
Well, bless you early.
If I just push my nose hard enough. Anyway, Lydia's Bridge is, it's in the Carolinas, between Chapel Hill and Greensboro. Is that North Carolina or South Carolina, Robbie?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. Mm-hmm. US Highway 70. The legend goes that if you're out there on a rainy night, you'll come across a young girl. She'll flag you down to go home, and it'll be near the bridge. And of course, she'll get in the car. She'll be friendly. She'll be nice. She'll be polite, but she won't be really overly talkative. Always opts to get into the back seat of the car, never gets into the front. She has a tendency to inspire the hero side of men. So almost inevitably, the man will jump out of the car and run around to open the door for her. And when he does, she's never there. As soon as she gets to the house, she's never there. But when they go to the door to make sure she got inside, it's always an elderly lady that answers and invites them in, and they'll always see a picture of Lydia, and the lady will explain, Lydia was my daughter. She died in a car accident out there on the bridge on what they call US 70 now. And on rainy nights, she's always looking to come home. And it's only on rainy nights, which I think is just really so sad. So very, very sad.
You said it was raining when she wrecked?
Uh-huh. And it's only on rainy nights that they ever run into her. And that's very similar to the Resurrection Mary story. The whole story about Resurrection Mary, I believe, is that she was at a dance. And the young man who had taken her to the dance, and this would have been back in the 1920s, was paying a little bit too much attention to another girl, and it made Mary angry. And she left the dance and was walking home. Of course, she was wearing dance shoes, which back then would have been very, very delicate shoes, even more so than today. And it was cold out, and she was freezing. And a car came up, and she turned to flag the car. When she did, she stepped into the road, and she just stepped too far, and it was too late for the driver to avoid her. And now Resurrection Mary will take you to one of two places. She'll either tell you to take her to her house, which is where, the real Mary actually lived, is been documented that that's the house where she lived, or she'll take you to the cemetery. And you'll get to the cemetery and you'll be like, what'd you want to come here for? But when you look in the back seat, she's not there.
We'd think that you would turn around and look in the back seat, and it'd be like that the episode of the movie The Twilight Zone. You want to see something really scary?
Or Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Tell them Marge sent you.
And then there's one of your listeners, and I don't know if they're in the chat tonight, but there's the White Lady of Wapsie Mountain, who going up Wapsie Mountain, which I believe is in Pennsylvania, I could be wrong. They say that if you're coming down there, you're in a hurry, you get to a point, and I believe it's called the Devil's Elbow on this particular road. It's a real sharp turn, and you'll be flagged down by a lady. She gets in the car, friendly, nice, grateful that you picked her up. She'll have a conversation with you. You have no indication whatsoever that you're carrying a ghost with you. But the minute you get to the bottom of the hill, you look in your rear view mirror, and she's not there anymore. Now, her story is that back before automobiles, she and her husband, either as newlywed, because there's two versions of the story, but there are always multiple versions, aren't there?
Always.
Excuse me. She and her husband were headed up the mountain in basically a buckboard, and in a hurry to get to wherever they were going. And as they were coming around the Devil's Elbow, he sort of lost control and was somehow careened under a tree and literally was decapitated. She, of course, fell out of the wagon and survived long enough to crawl back up to the wreckage because she went over the hill or over the mountainside. And they found the claw marks where she clawed her way back up. The other version of the story, which is so much more tragic and sad, is that they weren't newlyweds, but they were new parents, and they had their baby. She was carrying her baby in her arms, and when the accident occurred, of course, he was killed instantly. He decapitated. That's the same in both stories, but she lost the baby. The baby went over the side of the hill. And she lived long enough to travel around looking for the baby, and she never found the baby's body, and then died before anybody could rescue her or anybody knew about the accident. And they say that that's what she's doing out there to this day, is she's looking for her baby. And they say that you can sometimes hear a baby crying when you get to Devil's Elbow on that particular road.
There are a lot of those woman in white stories.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned the first episode of Supernatural. That was pretty much your classic woman in white story. But that story actually kind of transcends cultures. There's a very similar version of the woman in white story told all throughout Latin America called La Llorona.
Yep.
Miss Neoma locked up.
Yeah, I think she froze up.
Either that or she's holding very still. Oh.
Yep.
I think we know which one it was now.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, the one that in Anderson is kind of similar to all those that Miss Naomi was talking about. You know, we did a show on that one on what's really out there, and there's two versions of that story too. One of them was, I think the husband was cheating on the wife, and she went out there and threw herself and the child off the bridge, and the other one was a little bit more tragic as far as the car broke down and somebody hit them or something and pushed them off the bridge. So I mean, like you said, there's a million and one of these crybaby bridge women in white stories. I think Naomi said there's some of them involves a school bus full of kids. Every little small town seems to have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are any number of stories like that from just all over the place. There's always seems to be certain similarities to the legends, like it's a tragic car wreck, or their child died, or or in the Resurrection Mary story, she was killed in a car wreck. There she is.
Hey, hang on.
Hey, but there does seem to be a common theme of those you know tragic hitchhiker or car wreck victim, uh, woman in white type stories. Some of them are more horrific than others, like the type they profiled in Supernatural, where she actually kills the person that picks her up hitchhiking. But then there are others where, with Resurrection Mary, where people have time and again taken her home to the same address.
That's why I want to be buried in an elephant costume. I don't want to be, I want to be a ghost. I mean, that's sort of my goal in life, is to be a ghost in death. But I think if I'm buried in an elephant costume, that maybe I'll be haunting in an elephant costume. And there's a bridge not far from where I raised my kids, where I grew up. And it's an old rickety bridge. And great story about that bridge. I once terrified a teenage boy to the point that I thought he was going to actually rip my door handles off my car crossing that bridge. But I want to haunt that bridge. I want to be wearing an elephant costume. I had a favorite dog. His name was Bocephus. I want him to be wearing a dormouse uniform. And when people cross the bridge, I want to jump out of them and go, boo! And I just think that would be so fun. But I don't want to be buried in white, because I don't want to be a woman in white. I want to be a woman in elephant.
Well, if you're gonna be a ghost, you might as well be unique.
That would definitely be unique. I don't think I've ever heard of a elephant woman haunting anybody.
Do you guys hear me okay? I've had several comments in the chat. They said my audio is kind of low.
I hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Weird. Is it everything's working like it's supposed to on my end.
I
was just checking my settings.
You sound just like you always do.
Huh. Yeah, I'm looking at the mic settings, and I'm almost maxing out the mic when I talk. So something weird's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. Sounds good to me. But I am seeing those comments, so I don't know what that's about.
Patricia says she hears you fine.
Maybe it's just some audio glitch somewhere. I don't know. I haven't changed any settings, so it should be about the same as always.
Born Not to Run, that bridge is actually near a little town that is unincorporated called Smithville. It's and it's not even a town. It's really just literally a bend in the road. But the bridge itself is no longer a really cool rickety old bridge. They tore it down and built one that was a little safer to cross, which is disappointing. But if I live long enough, that one will be rickety before I die. So fingers crossed.
There's a really good haunted highway story from here in Missouri. It's near a town called Villa Ridge, which I believe is up near St. Louis. It's on old Route 66. There was a truck stop there called the Tri-County Truck Stop, and it's long since been closed. But apparently, a lot of paranormal investigators still go there, because the claim is it is a portal to the other side, and that spirits at that truck stop would attach themselves to truckers to try to get them to take them home. Really, really creepy story. I would like to go up and check that place out. I don't even really know where Villa Ridge, Missouri is. But supposedly this was a portal that allowed spirits to possess truckers to go home.
That is pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool, I think.
That'd be a good one to go shoot video at.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, kind of like what we were talking about with the black dog. I mean, maybe some of those black dog sightings tie in with some of these other things, and it's just kind of changed into a more milder version of what it actually was.
Mm-hmm. Well, stories do get watered down over time, but then you've got the opposite effect too. Sometimes stories that start out fairly innocuous get turned into something absolutely horrifying, kind of like a game of telephone.
Yeah, that's very true. Kind of got to weed those out, but they are fascinating. I would definitely want to visit that truck stop. I've heard lots of interesting things about that truck stop.
Well, if I ever organize an expedition, you're welcome to go.
Oh, yeah, sure. You're doing something special in Missouri this weekend. I see how you invited me to that.
I can tell you a little bit about it once we're off the air, but it's not our project. We were invited.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. I'm just giving you a hard time. I couldn't have gone if I wanted to. I'm actually I'm batching it this week, and I am loving every minute of it. I miss my husband desperately, but I also like having the bed to myself. So,
speaking of him not being there, you had any more nocturnal visitors?
You know what? I haven't. He's actually been gone for 3 weeks, and it has been incredibly quiet, with the exception of the night before last. And this had nothing to do with any nocturnal. Well, I guess it would be. It's so crazy. He had planned on being home yesterday, and I had just talked to him yesterday morning or Monday morning. So this was Monday night. I don't even know what day of the week it is now, but this would have had to have been Monday night, because he planned on being home on Tuesday. And he called me and we talked about it, and he decided to stay another week. His father is 97 years old. And as you can imagine, he wants to spend as much time with him as he can. And so I fully understand why he wants to be up there. But I went to bed, and I was almost 100% asleep when I felt my husband get into bed next to me. I felt the bed, just like I felt the covers go back. I felt the bed go down. I felt his body next to me. Now, I'm going to say, because if I don't, I'll lose my mind, that it was wishful thinking on my part, because I just learned that he wasn't going to be home, and I do miss him, and I do wish he could come home soon. So I'm going to go with that. Because
the other option, you to sleep.
Exactly. That was my one and only incident since he's been gone, and that was very, very creepy.
Whatever lets you sleep through the night.
Yeah. And it's funny because I do lock my door, and people laugh at me because I lock the bedroom door when I come in here at night. When I'm done, I got my notification that you were going to be on in half an hour. I made myself a cup of hot cocoa. I came in here, thought I'm going to curl up in my chair. I'm going to watch a little DA, and I'm going to go to bed. Last thing I did when I got in the bedroom, was I turned that lock on my door. And people laugh at me, and I always tell them it's because I can't stand watching the shadow people walking up and down my hallway. So this house has always been a little bit creepy, but that's the first time I've ever had one of them get in bed with me. Yeah. Moth and Finn pointed out that all black dogs are now 10-year-old boy ghosts, because I don't know if you're familiar with this particular legend, but they say, at least in the South, that the first person buried in a cemetery is destined to be that cemetery's guardian, and that guardian may take the form of the person, or it might be any kind of entity, in particular a black dog. And he and I have a new podcast that we just started last week, and we're recording this next week's. Yesterday was the first one. The one we recorded today will be next week's, and we were doing haunted cemeteries in Kentucky. And one of the cemeteries we talked about, the first person buried there was a 10-year-old boy, and now that cemetery has a black dog situation, which, by the way, that cemetery is about 30 miles north of the LBL. Just wanted to point that out.
Huh. Well, I'm definitely planning on getting back to LBL soon, hopefully this coming year.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be in Illinois anytime soon. I don't think we're moving up there, at least not this year. So if you do, just call me. I'll drive up, because I'm only a couple hours. I'm a couple hours from the north end. I'm less from the south end, but
well, the north end's really where I'm interested in going anyway.
Yeah, so just give me a buzz and I'll drive up.
Okay. Heck
Worst
yeah.
case, I mean, if nothing else, I'll take you. I assume that's coming. I'll just take you guys out to dinner or something. Just hang
I'm
out.
sure she'd love that.
Yeah,
Maybe we get Robbie to meet us there. It's kind of the halfway point between the two of us.
there you go.
Yep.
So I think that'll be fun.
Heck yeah, it would.
So
Since there's so much back road in LBL, I'm thinking about like saving up to get a couple of those electric trail bikes where you can pedal them, but you can also use the electric motor because there's some pretty steep hills in there. I thought about running some of those back roads and trails on one of those electric bikes because it's heavy enough frame that I could put gear on it, but still small enough where I can get in places where you can't get a car anymore.
and they'll fit perfectly into the back of my SUV when you call me to come and get you.
And hopefully they'll be a little bit harder to wrap around a tree like those other bikes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll be available.
Well, if that happens and we need somebody to come get us, we probably won't need to call you. You just have to listen for the gunfire because me and Robbie are going to be laying down an impressive volley.
Remember also to drop your phone in a place where it gets a signal so I can trace it. I'll at least know your last known location.
Johnny said that the load that is coming, he said it's equivalent to a Buick hitting you at from 60 yards out. So we'll be throwing Buicks downrange.
They hit like a Mack truck.
Like a Buick.
Yeah, when you put 10 rounds downrange, you've put a pound of lead downrange. An entire freaking pound. That's a
crazy.
lot of lead in a short amount of time.
Yep.
Yep.
So we'll send some Buicks downrange to get them.
So there's some other things I'd probably be dropping a lot of in a short amount of time too if I needed to use a gun that big on something.
Kay Bauer says, did y'all see that guy ride by on that e-bike with a 458 SOCOM?
The gun weighed more than the bike.
I can hear the park rangers go, what?
Are you familiar with Pat? Oh, Lord. One of the funniest writers I've ever read. And he talks all about growing up in Idaho, a poor kid hunting. And he went on his first deer hunt and he had his shotgun strapped to the handlebars of his bicycle. He's going up the hill and he passes these hunters and they're all decked out in their fancy truck and they got all their fancy equipment and he just goes right on past them. He gets all the way to the top of the mountain and 5 minutes into hunting, the nicest buck he's ever seen in his life steps right into his range. He takes one shot, hits it in the antler and drops it. He's so excited. He takes that buck and he's like, now how am I going to get it down this mountain? I've only got my bike. So he's rearranging it and he's adjusting it and doing everything he can. Finally, he gets the 2 front legs tied to the handlebars and the 2 back legs tied to the pedals. And he slides in up underneath it and he starts down the mountain. And about the time that deer wakes up, he remembers you can't kill a deer by shooting it in the antler. By the time he got back to those hunters, the deer had taken over and it was pretty good at driving that bike.
Why does that remind me of a scene from Tommy Boy?
A deer waking up in the back seat.
They all, oh!
Oh my gosh.
No way that just happened.
I think that's from the book called Poof No Eyebrows. I could be wrong. I can't think of Mothin could probably tell me if he's listening. Pat McManus, he already did. That's the guy's name. Hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And his first deer hunt is the one that just so did Northwoods. Northwoods knows it too. One of the funniest guys I've ever read. He talks about he and his best friend. He had a friend when he was a kid, and there was an old mountain man, and I can't remember if his friend as a kid's name was Wretch or if that was the mountain man. And then he had a neighbor as an adult. He lived in sort of a nice urban neighborhood. And he had a neighbor who wasn't versed in hunting and fishing, but the neighbor was interested in it. So he's always taken him. And they decided to go hunting, and they're in this box canyon and they're climbing up the side of the canyon. And Pat McManus gets about eye level with this ridge, and he's looking right at a rattlesnake. And he says, "Snake." And his buddy ran down the mountain, banked one whole side of the box canyon, and came to a dead stop at their car. And then Pat climbed down off his shoulders. Oh, my stars. That guy's funny. He's passed away now, but he was funny. I loved his stories. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Who needs railroad tracks?
Yeah, no kidding. I liked Garrison Keeler too. Lake Wobegon days.
Yeah.
Some of those stories are freaking hilarious.
I'm trying to remember. Pat McManus wrote for, it wasn't Field and Stream. It was, his was always the last story in the back page of the magazine. And all of his books are just a collection of those stories, but they are some of the funniest stories I've ever read in my life. And the mountain man that they hung out with, he decided to go ice fishing. So he took a old outhouse and he tied a sail on it to get it out to the middle of the lake. And Pat and his buddy were watching. There goes the and all you could see was the tracks of the outhouse and fingers from inside. Rancid Crabtree. That was the old guy's name. Rancid Crabtree.
Rancid Crabtree.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Again.
Oh. No, those are, everybody needs a good laugh once in a while, and those are gold.
Yeah, I love those stories. My sister got us all hooked on his books. Then he died, the darn fool. Anyway. So back to Ghost Highways.
Yeah. Robbie, you got any more in your area?
Yeah, let's see. Let me pull them back up. Let's see. What's a good one here?
Outdoor Life. That's what he wrote for.
I remember that magazine. I think I used to have a subscription to that.
Pat McManus wrote the short story at the back of every issue of that magazine.
Okay, here's one from Gaffney. Carson Drive in Draytonville, which I'm assuming is a city around Gaffney. It says the residents of Carson Drive have found that they have an unexpected guest on the road. When traveling down the road, some people have seen a white dog. The opposite of a black dog. They've seen a white dog. Doesn't seem too scary, right? Well, it also seems that this dog will stand up on its hind legs and come at you. No one seems to know where this demon dog comes from, but it was first sighted some years ago. And this was written in July 17th of 2020. So
I'm not too scared. I am not too scared of that one because obviously the other black dogs have scared the color right out of that one. So.
No, the black dogs are hellhounds. The white one's a heckhound.
He stands up and runs at you and says, "Come at me, bro."
The white one is the one in the elephant costume.
There you go. Isn't there a story of White Dog Man seen near Werewolf Springs?
There is the White Bluff Screamer, and that White Bluff is White Bluff. Yes, I said that correctly. Is just east of Montgomery Bell. It's in that same collection of towns around, and that has a really sad story. It's a long one. If you don't mind,
I don't mind a bit. I'd love to hear it.
So there was an elderly couple that lived in a really pretty little hollow there, or holler, as they say down here, just outside of White Bluff. And they had never had any children. They'd all their lives that they just wanted a child, and they'd never been successful in having kids. And about the time that they'd reached almost to the point where they were too old to have kids, the lady got pregnant. And you want to talk about two excited people. I mean, he'd come into town all the time, and all he did was brag about the fact that his wife was going to have a baby, and all the ladies got together and threw a big shower for her, and they made a great big deal out of it. And wasn't it wonderful? And when the baby came, everybody was so excited for him. Of course, they'd come into town and they'd show the baby off, and everything seemed fine for the first year or so. And then they began to notice that this baby wasn't quite right. The baby kind of had a mean streak. The baby wasn't developing like other children would develop. And little by little, they quit bringing the baby to town with them. They quit talking about the baby. And what had ultimately happened was, back at a time when parents were ashamed of children who were mentally or intellectually disabled, they resigned this child, a little girl, to the basement. And they would never let her come up. It was a cellar door with and the trap door in the floor. They'd throw her food down to her. She never saw the light of day. And she lived down there like an animal until she got old enough and strong enough that she came up one day and she killed both of her parents and ran off into the woods. And they said that you could hear her screaming. To this day, they say you can still hear her screaming in the woods. But the house became abandoned. People, avoided the house. They avoided the area because they believed that this girl had manifested into some kind of a strange white creature, and they didn't want to be around it. But there was a family that came east. They were looking, this is during the Depression, they were looking for a new start on life. Things were really rough, of course, for everybody at the time. They found this abandoned house. They moved in. It was the mom, the dad, about 5 or 6 kids, and the mom's mother. And they all took up residence in this house, and they worked really hard to make the house look nice. But they hadn't been there maybe 6 or 7 months, and long enough they'd gotten a garden in, and they'd been able to fix it up a little bit here and there, and they cleared some land to do some planting for field crops and things like that. But they began to hear a screaming in the woods at night, and it would get so bad that it was putting everybody on edge. The kids weren't sleeping. They didn't want to sleep in their own beds because they would say that it was coming to the windows and looking in. The mom and dad, because they weren't getting any sleep, because the kids were on edge, they were beginning to get on edge. The 3 adults in the house were constantly fighting with each other and picking at each other, and it was just driving them all crazy. And one night, they awakened once again to the screaming in the woods, and the father said, "I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go find this thing. I'm going to hunt it down. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to put an end to this." So he grabs his gun and he goes out into the woods, and he starts going towards where he hears the screaming. And he gets almost to where the screaming is, and it moves. It's someplace else. And he heads over this direction, and this thing leads him on a merry chase through the woods through almost the entire night. And just before the sun came up, the man heard the screaming again, and this time it was coming from the area of the house. And this time it wasn't just one screaming, it was a lot of screaming. And he goes running as fast as he can through creek bottoms and briar patches and crazy, just tearing himself up to get home because he knows this thing's at the house, and he's got the only weapon to protect them with him. And he goes running to the house, and as he's running up the steps, he knows the house is deadly silent. Something's definitely wrong. And the front door standing open, and he looks inside, and it's just a bloodbath. Every member of his family, all of his children, his wife, and his mother-in-law have all been just ripped to pieces. And he's just devastated. Well, he staggers into town, and he tells the townspeople what's happened. They go out, they piece together the bodies, they give them all a nice funeral, and the man goes to stay with friends at a neighboring farm. And But he's devastated. He can't stand it. He needs to take vengeance on this thing that took his family. And one morning he got up and he said, I got to go find this thing. I'm going to hunt it down and I'm going to kill it. And nothing that anybody could say or do would stop him from this mission that he had decided to go on. And so he takes his gun and he goes off into the woods, and he's never heard from again. Now, if you go to White Bluff, it's one of the few places that you go to that they are actually proud of their cryptid. Anybody that you go to there will tell you all about it. Some people say it looks like a white wolf. Some people say it looks like a big white Bigfoot. Everybody says that you can hear it screaming in the holler. You know, there have been people on bikes who have been chased down the road. A lot of bike riders in this area, and have come into White Bluff and said something chased them all the way into town. There have been people who have been out hiking who have been chased out of the woods by this thing, and they always say that it looks like some kind of a big white, either like a werewolf or a Bigfoot. So that's the White Bluff Screamer story.
Well, it would make sense if it's a white werewolf, because the proximity to Werewolf Springs.
Mm-hmm. I think personally that it is the same creature. They're too close together for them not to be in the same family. And of course, I don't think I've never believed, whenever I talk about a legend or a myth, I refer to it as a creature, I really mean a species. Mm-hmm. I never believe that it's just one. For one thing, that would have been nearly 100 years ago when the man's family was killed. And I remember when I did some research on it that there was a newspaper article about a family being killed in that area. But if I'm not mistaken, and it's been a few years since I did that research, so I could be wrong. So I'm hesitant to say this because I hate giving out misinformation. But I think that it was determined that a psychopath had come and killed the family, and they never found the killer.
Yeah, kind of like the pack of wild dogs.
Right. Yeah.
Unknown canine species.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the big head scratcher. Unknown canine species.
Mm-hmm.
Really? How is it an unknown canine species? Haven't we documented every canine species?
Exactly. So,
I mean,
but
you can send a DNA swab in of your dog, and they can tell you how much percentage of every breed this dog is. So how is it now an unknown? Wait a minute. What's this 5% unknown canine in my dog?
Exactly. So yeah, but that I do believe that I did find a newspaper article, if I'm not mistaken, that did talk about the family having been killed, and it was determined by the police that it had been some kind of a transient psychopath. But and of course we all know, like you said, right? But it lends credence to the story.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah. And I have a subscription to newspapers.com. That's where I get a lot of my stories from. And I find a lot of strange articles like that where, oh yeah, this family is found just ripped to shreds. And we don't know who did it, but boy, were they good at tearing them apart with their bare hands.
That's one thing I really respected about my old chief out at Walnut Grove, Joe Mahan, if he's watching. Joe was one of those guys that I don't care if somebody said Bigfoot kicked in my front door and killed everybody in the house. If that's what the evidence says, that's what Joe's going public with.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that just did not give a crap. The coroner could be saying, hey, this might be a guy. Oh yeah, a guy with 18-inch bare footprints. Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally. Got it.
Well, it's like the, I can't think of the name of the county up here in Kentucky where the miniature horses and the dog and I think a couple of goats were killed. And the sheriff was like, this was animal. And the DNR comes in and says, oh no, this was done by a human being with a knife. No human footprints, no clean cuts, nothing to indicate anything was used but claws and teeth. And the sheriff's like, I'm not telling the people that this was a human being that did this with a knife. No, and bullets and guns. There's no bullet casings. There's nothing to believe.
No
that
bullet
this was,
hole.
right. These things were ripped apart. and he went toe to toe with the DNR on that. Would not back down. Would not say, I'm not going to tell people what you said because you were not telling them the truth. And I have to give the guy credit because, you know, it would have been a lot easier to say, well, you know, there was some psycho out there killing animals than to say, we don't know what's big enough to tear them apart.
Right.
So, and that's how more people get killed, by the way, is when we say it was a psychopath with a gun and a knife when it wasn't, because people are not looking for the right thing.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I think they're really doing people a misservice by not coming forward, because I guarantee you the government knows these things are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And by not admitting it, they're just letting more and more people wander into these things and get killed. I mean, look at all the missing persons in national parks, and that's just the ones that get tracked. There are lots of people that go missing and nothing is ever done about it law enforcement wise. Homeless people, if they go missing, since they don't have a permanent residence and nobody can verify where they live or where they go, you can't pursue that. There's no missing person case to investigate. Like, odds are good they probably just moved on. It's an itinerant population, but so you can't really pursue a missing persons case unless you've got eyewitnesses said, yeah, I saw something drag this guy off under that bridge.
Yeah.
And even then, law enforcement's going to be fairly skeptical because the substance abuse problem among a lot of the homeless.
Right.
But and even with eyewitness testimony, people are going to be hard pressed to believe that this guy just didn't pack his bags and stuff and disappear. Hitchhikers going missing. How many times you've been driving down the road and seen a vehicle at the side of the road with one of those tags that the state troopers puts in the window? Like, This is a fairly nice car. Why has it been sitting here for days?
Exactly.
I've seen some beaters left on the side of the road going, yeah, they ain't coming back for that thing. But I've also seen some very nice cars that somebody should have come back with a tow truck.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
And it takes, what is it, Robbie? I know it varies from state to state, but it's usually at least 3 days before they'll tag it.
Ours is 24 hours for the sheriff's office. Usually, if it's been, they'll log it, and if it's there 24 hours later, they'll put a 24-hour removal tag on it, and then if it's not, so basically it's a 48 hours,
right?
24 for it to be there, and then 24 more hours to move it after it's been tagged. And if it hadn't been moved after it's been tagged, then they'll tow it.
And granted, I'm sure some of them are incidents that somebody got pulled over and arrested, and nobody was able to come and get the car, but that doesn't account for all of them. I've seen cars at the side of the road with the hood up that has been tagged, and I'm like, hey, somebody was working on this thing, and now now it's getting ready to get towed off because nobody came back for it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That ain't right.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that because you see them all the time. I mean, you see vehicles at the side of the road, and granted, I've seen some real pieces of crap going and looked at it and went, ain't nobody coming back for that. They drove it till it died, got out and walked away. But, again, I've seen a number of really nice vehicles that were just inexplicably there for days.
And they're still making payments on the darn thing.
Oh, yeah. A new enough vehicle, there's no way it's paid off. Right.
Unless there's a
wealthy. Whole rash of rich people that just drive it till it runs out of gas and get out and flag a car down.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's out of gas. I couldn't possibly put gas in it. No, that is beneath me.
My mom and dad were not. Okay, well, maybe they were. People used to joke that my dad would buy a new car when the ashtray got full. It was a big joke in my hometown. Oh, look, there goes Blackie. They called my dad Blackie because he was a very, very dark man. Well, there goes Blackie in a brand new car. A ashtray must have got full. It was just my dad's thing. He loved vehicles. He loved brand new cars, and he loved them until that brand new car odor went away, and then he had to have a new one.
Yeah, we joke that my wife's brother doesn't like to wear the new knobs off the side of the tires. Every time I turn around, that guy's got a new truck.
That was my dad.
That one hit 3,500 mimiles. I can't. No. I can't. I couldn't keep it after that.
My mom and dad.
There was still 98% of the warranty left. I don't know.
My mom and dad. Mom always drove a new car, and dad always drove a new truck. And dad's trucks were always odd years, and mom's were always even years, because every year there was either a new truck or a new car. And my mother's. Oh, I take it back. My mom's cars were always odd years. Yeah, that's what I said. My dad's were, before my parents got divorced, my mom was driving a 77 LTD and my dad was driving a 78 Chevy pickup. And then they got divorced in 79 and my mom didn't buy a new car that year. So, but there are people who do that. Can't imagine why, but they do. I'm driving a vehicle that's 13 years old and I'll probably drive it for another 5 years. So
I'll drive mine until it's paid off or the warranty's expiring.
Well, mine's been paid off for a while, but I'm still driving it.
Yeah, I've looked under the hood of that car. I love that little car dearly. It's a fun car to drive, but there is no way I'm working on that thing.
Let me put it this way. I'm driving a vehicle that I have owned for way too long. I have replaced everything on it, everything in it, everything attached to it, but it occupies the same space, so it's still the same vehicle. It just doesn't have any of the same parts on it anymore.
When I was in high school, I had this old beater 74 Ford pickup. It was a farm truck. I mean, we beat the hell out of that thing, hauling rocks and lumber and wood and everything you could haul in a truck. And we beat the tar out. I put like 4 back glasses in the thing because we would be hauling rocks out of the field and somebody would get a little haywire and boosh, rock go through the back window. So it was often as not that thing, the back window was covered with plastic. So, but it was a well abused truck. It was a 74 Ford F100 with a 3-speed on the column, and I put that truck through living hell. And finally, when it was just about on its last legs, Dad goes, "You probably ought to just go ahead and sell that thing." And I'm like, "Why is that?" He goes, "Well, let me put it this way." And he popped the hood on it. He points down there, and it was cold. It hadn't been running, and he takes the radiator cap off and goes, "Now back that out and put a new truck under it, and it'll be okay." He said the rest of that needs to go.
I had a Geo Metro. In one of those little tiny throwaway cars that you would think would be absolutely worthless, and that was the toughest vehicle I ever owned. We put 315,000 miles on that vehicle. It was my son. It was parked in the wrong spot and he was not available. So the football team picked it up and moved it for him. He once rolled it down a hill.
I knew a guy that had a Geo tracker.
Yeah.
And back before Chevy bought the tracker,
mm-hmm.
a little Geo tracker, and he drove that thing forever.
Yeah,
forever.
Toughest vehicle I ever owned. The last 15,000 miles, once it hit 300,000, the seals blew. You couldn't go up a hill. It didn't have the power to go up a hill. But it was so light, it was no big deal. You could push it up anyway.
We call a vehicle like that a rolls canardly. Rolls down one hill, can hardly get up the next.
Exactly. But there's a real steep hill in Rock Island, Illinois called 18th Avenue, and it is a very steep hill. And every now and then I'd forget, and I get all the way to the bottom of 18th Avenue where you can't turn around, and I'd think, "Oh Lord, I'm gonna have to push this car now." And that's a long hill, but that was the toughest vehicle we ever owned, and we put that thing. I mean, both of my teenage sons learned to drive in that thing. And they learned to drive at a time when they had quit teaching manual driving. I had to teach them how to drive a manual transmission. Their mom did, and I'm not a good driver. That wasn't a cool thing to begin with. And they did some awful things to that car. Bent the frame on it once. And the guy down at the dealership was a friend of my younger son. He was the father of a friend of my younger sons. He called me up and he said, I told him who this car belongs to. And I told him there's no way I was going to call you and tell you we couldn't fix it. So we fixed the frame. But when you sell it, make sure you tell the people what we did. So for about the last 100,000 miles, it may not have been all that safe to drive.
Going down the road kind of at an angle.
Yeah.
Front tires are facing down the road, and the car's kind of ginked out a little bit behind it.
Just a little bit. Look in your rear view mirror and see your passenger door.
I saw a car driving. I saw a car driving down the main street here in Springfield, Glenstone Avenue, and it was an older like Chevy. I don't remember what, like a Malibu or something, like late 70s model or something like that. Primer all over it, and it was going down the street. And when the front tires, one was like this and the other was like this.
Oh,
just a squalling as it went down the road.
Got a little camber in front. That's all. He's ready to go to Daytona.
Yeah.
Make a couple laps.
So, has anybody ever seen a ghost car on the highway?
There is a place here in Missouri that supposedly, if you're driving at night, a car will come running up behind you and flash its headlights at you. And people have tried to outrun it, and other people have just stopped. And every time, when they get to the end of that road, it's the car's gone. But if you just stop and get out, the car's gone anyway.
There's a very similar story about that in the LBL. If you're going through the LBL at night, sometimes a truck will come up behind you, and its lights will just about blind you, and it'll get right on your tail end. And about the time you get to the north, if you're coming south headed north, you get over, that whatever that road is there that cuts across the middle, it just disappears.
Huh.
Yeah, it's the ghost truck
because
of
there's
the LBL.
Water there?
I have no idea. I don't know. And I honestly don't. I just said south heading north, and it may be north heading south. I'm not sure which. I just know that
ghost car on 522 in New Mexico.
Ooh. Well. Anyway, Plainfield, Illinois.
Wow, Mrs. Moon said that happened to her in New Mexico. It happened to her. It came up fast, and when she pulled over, it was gone.
Linnea, not the trace, the road that crosses the trace. The trace runs north to south. The road that you reach is the one that goes east to west. It splits the LBL in half. That's the road that you reach, and then it disappears. But you're going up the trace, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, DA.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was thinking the trace at first, too, until you said it crossed it. And then I couldn't remember the name, but that's a highway, but I can't remember the highway name.
Yeah, I can't either. I never venture too far from the trace when I'm there. So, Ed Gein was in Wisconsin, actually, Plainfield, Wisconsin.
Ah, at least it was Plainfield.
Mm-hmm. That's true. One of the serial killers I find most interesting. Apparently, so do most movie makers, because they've certainly made enough movies based on him. I mean, not on him specifically, but on his actions.
Mm-hmm. There's a place in Connecticut called Jeremy Swamp Road, just outside a little town called Southbury, where if your car breaks down on this road at night, they'll find the car, but they never find the person. And what locals claim is, you've heard of the term melon heads.
Mm-hmm.
They claim there are melon heads in the woods out there, and they will eat anybody unlucky enough to break down there after dark.
I included that road in one of my very first stories on my channel. Trucker's Tales, I think, is the name of the story. One of the very first stories I did a couple of years ago. And yeah, there's a whole melon head story that goes with that too.
Really?
Uh-huh. Well,
they see melon heads in a lot of other places. Ohio, up in the Appalachians too.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
I think Kay Bowers wants to know what melonhead is.
Hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalia. Has cephalus?
Yeah.
Cephalus. Hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus, what it's called if one person is that's the disease, but somebody who has it is a hydrocephalus or hydrocephalus, depending on how you pronounce it.
Well, phallus is something entirely different.
I didn't say phallus.
That's water on something else.
Add the CE in it, in front of it. You left out an important part.
If that part's drippy, you probably need to see a doctor. I'm going to say penicillin's probably going to be involved.
Oh, is my face red?
I just beat you to the punch, Miss Naoma.
Yeah, you did.
That's
not mentally, mind you. I was already there in my brain, but I was trying to hold it in.
That's supposedly what Jason Voorhees had.
Hydrocephalia.
And it basically makes... Basically,
well, he was a boy.
Old drippy Jason. All right, we lost Miss Naoma.
Okay.
She's got the vapors.
I do. I have the vapors. I just don't know what's come over me. Oh, gentlemen.
That's almost as big a laugh as we get when we start talking about the cat-nated order of the hoo-hoo.
You know, this new podcast that my son and I are doing, we actually call it Snark Fin Soup after the concatenated order of the hoo-hoo, because their leader is a snark.
That's funny. Snark Fin Soup.
Yep. Whew.
Miss Linnea says, y'all broke Miss Naoma.
They do it all the time to me, Linnea. They break me all the time.
I'm going to spell it this time instead of pronounce it so I don't break you again, Naoma.
Okay.
HYDROCEPHALUS.
Hydrocephalus.
But depending on where you're from, you could pronounce it that way. You just left the CE out of the pronunciation.
That's a whole different disease in South Carolina.
All you heard was the last part of the word.
I did. I'm sorry, but that's what I heard.
So what does that condition actually do? The head part, not the other part.
It is a buildup of fluid.
Which head?
The cavities.
Big head, not little head.
Yes. A buildup of fluid in the cavities deep within the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Extra fluid on the brain, basically.
And it causes a swelling. And I had a cousin. She passed away a few years ago, but she was profoundly, and I'm using this word in the medical sense, she was profoundly retarded. She never advanced past about a 1-year-old or an 18-month-old baby. She lived into her 40s, and when she became of age, her parents signed her over to the state. And the state hospital where she lived out her life, they had several cases of that word. And
that word.
And I can remember seeing those babies, and they rarely live very long, but they have their heads just look, because they're basically, I mean, imagine you break your ankle and your foot swells up. Imagine that's your head that did that. So it's sad. Yeah, I got broked.
You broke my nose.
So, yeah. Anyway, um, and there's, I mean, I can remember when I was little, before I was allowed to go visit her, because I didn't get to visit her until I became an adult. My grandmother, religiously, my grandparents drove up at least twice a month to see her, because she lived in a home that was about 60 miles, I think, from our hometown. But they went religiously to see her. And my grandmother would always come back and she would talk about the melon heads, because she said it was so tragic to see them, and knowing that they wouldn't live for long, because the pressure on the brain is enough to, and they're really, I don't think that there's anything much that they can do. I mean, other than to relieve some of the fluid, but the fluid continues to, at least they couldn't back then. I'm sure this has been, well, I'm 58. I'll be 59 in 2 months. So we're talking years ago, decades ago. But that's what a melon head is. And now I know that the melon heads in Pennsylvania are attached to one of the gates of hell.
Really?
Yeah, remember we did the story on the gates of hell.
Right. That's right.
Home week.
I forgot about that.
And one of the gates of hell is in Pennsylvania. And the story behind it is that there was a doctor who had a lab, a Frankenstein type doctor. He had a mental institution there, and he kept kids, and he experimented on children with melon heads. He was a bit cruel to them. They all broke out and they went into the woods to live. The problem with that being is a melon head child would not have that capability, but that's the story. And if you go into the woods there looking for the hospital, which has long since been burned down, the story is that the melon heads burned down the hospital with the doctor in it. And if you go into the woods there looking for that down this road, I can't remember the name of the road, DA, because it's been so long since we did that story. But the melon heads will attack your car and you may not come back out.
That is one thing consistent about the places with the melon head stories, like Ohio and Pennsylvania, and the Appalachian stories, is that all the stories about them, they tell people they're dangerous, and they think, especially in the case like along the Appalachian Trail, that they may be responsible for a good chunk of the disappearances along that trail.
Well,
Yeah,
Kate, I always mentioned it, but that's what the movie Wrong Turn, all those movies, that's what that was based on, was stuff like that.
Now, there is a family in Pennsylvania, in another part of Pennsylvania. It's something mountain, Machina Mountain, Mick something mountain. Anyway, and they, very inbred family, very withdrawn. Live in, if you look them up, you can actually find a picture of what's supposed to be their house, which is basically sort of built into the mountain and then more like a cave than a house. Just the front part of the house kind of sticks out. And they were reportedly cannibals. And you break down there, they don't even break down, they ambush your car there. And there were people that were disappearing there, and they were saying that the cannibal family was getting them, and that's not the only. I mean, there's several cases of cannibal families that we know of.
That's pretty much the plot of the first Wrong Turn movie.
That's kind of like the Sawney Bean story from Scotland. It was basically this family, the family of Sawney Bean, started living in these caves, and they were preying on people that would be traveling by, basically cannibalizing them.
Yes.
But after successive generations of the family interbreeding, they described all of them as being, strange of countenance, having big heads and things like that. So it was like a couple of generations of inbreeding of the same family. But they were real horror stories of them abducting and killing people, and it's documented. It really happened.
Now, we also have, Mothin just mentioned the blue people in Kentucky. They don't have a reputation for being mean or anything, but they actually do have blue skin.
I've heard about that.
And you can actually Google them and find pictures of the family, and they definitely have very blue skin, and that is a direct result of years, generations of inbreeding, is that blue skin. And I'm talking blue, like the blue around your name there on where it says D.A. Roberts. That it's blue. It's Smurf blue. It's crazy. There was a really good book that came out a few years ago. It's a novel called the Bookwoman of something Creek. Can't remember what it was. And it's the woman in the main character in the book is a member of that family. And I don't think the book is true. I think it's just a novel. But that family is so well known that they actually have characters in books about them. And nobody has ever accused this family of doing anything nefarious or anything like that. They've just been so inbred over the generations because they live way up in the Appalachians, and they're just not. They're not around enough other people to, deepen the gene pool in any way. And most of them apparently have developed this blue skin. I think there aren't very many, the Fugates. I don't think there are very many members of the family left who have the blue skin. I think that most of them have gone off and either died or married outside of the family. And of course that gene eventually becomes recessive again. But so that does happen. There's a lot of inbreeding in this world, and it's crazy. I mean, look at all of the royal houses of Europe and some of the crazy things that they've dealt with.
Oh yeah.
So Moon-eyed people, yes, that's also an interesting. And the Moon-eyed people, I think, are attached to. There's a story involving the Moon-eyed people and the Pukwudgies, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I do believe that there's a connection between at least one story that connects the Moon-eyed people with the Pukwudgies, and of course, then there's also the castle in Georgia there. You know where that is? It's up on the mountain. The legend is that a Welsh prince was given the option by the Welsh king had two sons around 1100, maybe right around that period. He didn't know which one to leave his kingdom to, so he said to the sons to fight it out. The one brother wasn't willing to kill the other, so he got on a ship and came to the United States, and that's when he discovered the southern part of the U.S. There's a legend with the meeting the natives here and getting along with them really well, going back across the ocean, loading up a shipload of people and bringing them back here, and actually creating a community here. And there are the remnants of a castle up on a mountain that they believe was built by the Welsh prince. And I believe that's in Georgia. I could be wrong. I hate it when I'm not 100% sure, because I don't want to give misinformation, because we have enough of that going around. But the interesting thing is they say that is where a lot of every now and then there's a blue-eyed gene that runs through Native Americans, and they think that that's where that blue-eyed gene comes from the Welsh prince and the people he brought here.
Well, I was reading, I'll have to find the book, but it said some of the first explorers that came to the Missouri River Valley encountered a tribe of Native Americans that spoke a variant of Celtic.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of
what's that big rock? The Judaculla rock in South Carolina.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
the Judaculla rock has Ogham script on it, which is Celtic script.
I did a story on Judaculla too. What a lot of people don't realize about the U.S. is that you may have had, say, the Choctaw over here and the Nez Perce up here, but there was such mostly coming through the Mississippian culture. What is that called there? Cahokia. There was such a trade route that you could find things from Georgia all the way up in Washington, because the trade routes that they traded with each other passed a lot of that stuff around. And so a lot of people don't realize it. People assume because they didn't build castles and have kings and queens and feudal systems that the Native Americans were not a cultured people, but they were an extraordinarily cultured people. One of the biggest civilizations in history, of course, is the Cahokian, the city of that city there. So city-state, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, the Cahokian mound builders, they were massive cities.
Yeah. So,
and the Cahokia one wasn't the only one.
No, they call that the Mississippian culture because it's up and down the Mississippi is where it seems to be centered. But Cahokia, I think, was the biggest one. So,
Annette and I have been there. We went over to the Cahokia Mounds. Really neat place.
Yeah,
we want to go back, but the last time we were up in St. Louis, the actual museum portion of it was closed.
Well, I have not actually been there. I would like to go. I've studied it extensively, but I've never. One of my, I think the reason that I'm a jack of all trades and I'm really not extremely knowledgeable in anything is because all of my life I've had all of these different things that I've wanted to be, and I always have had a deep fascination with archaeology. And so when I was in college, one of my great accomplishments there was to take a course in archaeology. And that was one of the things we studied in detail was the Cahokia Mounds. So I've studied it, never been there, would love to go.
It is really a cool place if you ever get a chance to go.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it.
So anyway, yeah, there's that. And I keep, again, this doesn't seem to be anything about highways and bridges. I'm so sorry.
Right, we get sidetracked. It happens. It wouldn't be one of our shows if we didn't get sidetracked.
True.
I always feel like I make it worse for some reason.
Nah. Now, we believe me, we can, what's the
Naomi, that's a fallacy.
Lead us not into temptation. We can find it well enough on our own.
Yeah. I know, but I've watched shows where you guys got all the way through and did pretty good.
Yeah, but
I've never participated in one of those shows.
That's very rare.
It may be extremely rare that we make it all the way through a show without deviating from the topic.
Well, I mean, honestly, you just do it for a few minutes, but I've never participated in one of those. And I was a regular on your show for 9 months. So I can't explain why it's never happened to me, except unless I'm the reason.
Oh, no. But like I said, we do it plenty without you. We get off topic pretty easily on our own. Hell, we get off topic when it's just me and Robbie.
Yep.
Well. So anyway,
and me and Doc together, that's a recipe for derailment.
Yeah, those two are a sidetrack machine.
Yep. One of us, and all it takes is one of us making a movie comment, and it's done.
Then we're off to the races.
Yeah, Robbie, did they make a T-shirt for you that said "Topic"? We don't need no stinking topic. They did for me.
I think it was for both of us, to be honest.
I think it was.
And I still have one of those shirts.
I never got one. I wish I had.
I think any one of us could wear that T-shirt at any given time.
Yeah, we've all earned that nickname a few times.
Because I'm gonna tell you, now to make you feel better, went through Doc's class, and he does the same thing teaching his class.
Does he?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Of course, me and Kim were in there to help out with it too, so there is that.
I used to do that to teachers in high school.
He'd say, "I'm gonna explain."
Get them off on a tangent.
Mm-hmm. And then we didn't have homework that night. I was really bad about it.
We had a physics teacher.
Co-host.
I had a physics teacher named Bob Harding, And if we didn't want to hear the lecture that day, we would ask Bob if he had ever been hang gliding. And he always had a story, or you ever been whitewater rafting? And he would stop what he was doing to tell us this story about the time he went whitewater rafting on the Snake River. And then the bell would ring and he'd be like, "Oh, I never got to the lecture. You guys know this stuff."
Yeah, I did that a lot to teachers, and I was legendary for it. I could sidetrack any teacher. I don't care how serious they thought they were. I could get them off on a tangent for something.
We had an instructor at the academy. It was that way. If you didn't want to hear what he was saying that day, which pretty much was always talking about the Fourth Amendment, he just asked, "Hey, your son plays college basketball, right?" And he'd start talking about his son playing college basketball and how he was going to go to the NBA and he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And really, keep going. Tell us more.
The guy that taught at my academy, I won't tell his name because he probably still teaches there, but he had a voice that was like somewhere between Ben Stein and Kermit the Frog. He had this high pitched Kermit the Frog voice, and he just droned on. And yeah, he was hard to listen to. And he had apparently been an EMT one time, and I asked him one time how many people that he'd actually saved performing CPR. And it was a shockingly low number. And I was like, "God dang, you know what? I'm working on that."
Well, see, when he got there, somebody asked him a question and he forgot he was supposed to.
Like, was that 3 or was that 4? I don't remember.
Mrs. Moon, I'm an Aquarius. Mrs. Moon asked me if I'm a Sagittarius. No, I'm an Aquarius, sadly.
Little Patty says we perfected going down the rabbit hole.
Every place I've ever lived, I've always named the house. And this is the only place I've ever lived that I didn't give it a name. And I just realized I should name this house the Rabbit Hole.
Kind of apropos. B says, so while you're off topic, any stories about North American cryptid dragons? I don't really have any dragon stories. I don't remember hearing any.
Well, what is that artwork that's on the bluff there by St. Louis? It looks like a dragon. What is that called? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I do, but I can't remember the name of it.
Talk amongst yourselves. I'll find it.
Well, while you're looking for that, Mikey wanted to know if you had any haunted roads in Ohio.
Yes. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
No, that was to you.
Oh.
He wanted to know if you knew of any haunted roads in Ohio. That's where they're from.
It seems like there is. Oh, darn it. I'm sorry. I can't multitask. I can't apparently talk and think at the same time either. So that's kind of scary.
We broke to her again.
Yeah, you did.
We sidetracked her.
Okay. I'm going to get me one of those. The Piazza bird.
Piazza bird.
Yep, that's it. In Alton. And that looks very much like a dragon.
It does. Now you mentioned it, yes, it does. Of course, Thunderbird stories could be a type of dragon.
Is that fairly visible to you? I believe that that's actually a recreation of it, because I think that the original one was carelessly washed away, but that is as close as the description of it that I don't know, one of those Frenchmen that came down the river, Marquette and Juliet, Lewis and Clark. Okay, we'll go with them. One of those two gave about it.
Brandy Copeland said the dragon bird in St. Louis is the cockatrice.
The cockatrice. Okay. Anyway, so, and I do think that, Illinois has they have the Thunderbirds. Of course, a lot of states have the Thunderbird story, but a lot of the descriptions of the Thunderbird in Illinois do come across as being more dragon-like than pterodactyl or Big Bird of Sesame Street like. So, although I think that the most famous one was the boy that was playing in his backyard back in, I think, around 1972. He was playing baseball with some friends, and this thing swooped down and picked him up and tried to carry him off. But I do think that was more of a pterodactyl one. So I don't think that was a dragon one.
They talked about that on Monster Quest, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that story from Monster Quest.
I
don't hear too much about like modern day sightings of dragons.
Not a whole lot of them, but there are. The one that I'm the most fascinated with, and I really would love to do an entire show on, is gargoyles. And I think that you and I actually did do a show on it once, maybe, but we really didn't delve because we got sidetracked as always. But I really would like to do a really deep, in-depth story on gargoyles in North America. Okay. And I think that let's do it. Because I think there's stories in California of people going down the highway and being, followed by the gargoyle or having the gargoyle land on the hood of their car. There's
stories in New Mexico and Arizona too. It's always the desert.
And Texas. The most famous gargoyle story happened at maybe at Fort Sam Houston, but I'm not sure, at a military base in Texas, where the guy was coming out late at night. He saw it sitting up on the building. He didn't say anything for a few days. Finally, it got to him, and he finally went in, and he was like, I was kind of hanging out in the parking lot the other night, and I kind of happened to notice, and one of his co-workers said, "Oh yeah, I know what you noticed." And they took him into the supervisor, and apparently they have an entire file on sightings of this particular gargoyle at this base. And they're not St. Louis, New Orleans. There's lots of sightings there, and I think that those are very closely tied to dragon stories because, some of the gargoyles could possibly be dragons. So I think that would be a really interesting one to do in depth.
Here's a question for you. Do you think the Van Meter monster was a gargoyle?
That's a good one.
Because I kind of think it is.
So here's of it. I have a person that I know, and I will not call him a friend, but he is a person that I know who is a writer who writes those Erie, Illinois books, and not this guy. I just wanted to show you I have the Van Meter Visitor book, but he writes in Creepy Iowa and books like that, and he's I don't know, he's probably got 30 or 40 books. He wants to interview me for his next book, and he asked me, his next book is called Creepy Iowa, I think. And he was asking me about this, and I told him all the information that I have on this comes from this little thing right here. I honestly don't know what they saw, but you're right, it could be. Or, it could.
Supposedly, they sealed it in that mine outside of town. They're talking about reopening the mine.
Well, yeah, here's something else. Years after they sealed it, they still have sightings anyway. There's a place called Coralville Lake, which is in Iowa City, just north of Iowa City. Mm-hmm. And there were some people camping out there that they saw the thing fly over them. And then there's another town just on the other, because Van Meter is, if this is Des Moines and this is north and this is west and this is east, Van Meter is just like right here outside of Des Moines. And almost exactly polar opposite on the other side of Des Moines is another town where a pastor was driving home one night, and I think it was him and his wife, and they saw it. And so even if they sealed it in, they didn't do a very good job of it, because people have seen this thing in the decades following the events in this book. So
I think we should definitely do a gargoyle show then.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that. You tell me when I'll be here. We'll talk about it because you know me.
Sounds good.
Camera.
Well, we'll make that happen here very soon. We are at the 2-hour mark. We probably ought to talk about our affiliate programs and start winding things down. Feeling like I've got my energy back, so 2 hours really didn't take it out of me. The other day we did an hour and a half, and I was wiped out. Yeah, that was pretty much the end of my energy for the night. But I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm thinking things are gonna be better. So I think I'm finally past that point where I've just got no energy. So keep your fingers crossed, and I appreciate the prayers and prayers, everybody, as they've certainly come in handy.
I was so rude. I totally forgot. I just kept running my mouth. I didn't even think to ask if you were okay.
Oh yeah, well, I'm here. So
anyway, you want to run your sponsor stuff?
yeah, we'll let Doc speak for himself.
All right.
Let the little guy tell his own story. Here he is, the Doc himself.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And remember, those classes, his classes and the kits are FSA and HSA certified. So if you've got a first responder money, training budget money, I would definitely be looking at that. And also some of his basic classes are available for free at Dark Angel Medical on YouTube. So definitely check that out. And if you go pick up anything from Dark Angel Medical, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order. And make sure you mention codename Wild Hunt or the Team Odin to get one of those little Team Odin rockers for your kit. Robbie,
Yep.
You want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag?
Sure thing. Scallywag Tactical is a company that we're partnered with that make folding knives, fixed blade knives, kitchen knives, pretty much any kind of blade that you could use in your everyday or for other things. Some of the best knives.
Brisk, anyone?
You can poke a hole for that drippy problem.
I know. I was just going to say we could have a bris.
You could relieve the pressure with this knife. It's very sharp. Just don't catch it when it's falling.
Oh, my.
Sorry,
Scallywag Tactical, the best reason to have a first aid kit.
Yes.
Yes, and DA and I are living proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we
God
are.
loves to remind us that all the time. So, if you've read the books, you've heard all the knives mentioned in it: the Gunner's Mate, the Bounty, the Jolly Roger, the Privateer,
Boarding axe.
the Boarding Axe. They've all made appearances in DA's books. There's a reason for that. It's because they make good quality products. Like I said, I've always loved to hear Steve tell his story about how Craig made a customer for life with him because he did something he didn't have to do. You break one of these Kershaws, or now you might have a lifetime warranty on something like a Kershaw, but you're going to have to go through sending it back and, all this kind of stuff.
A lot of bells and whistles to go through.
You're more than a number to Craig. That's all you are to these other knives. And those are good knives. They're great. Don't get me wrong. I've had Kershaw. I've had Schrade. I've had Spyderco. I've had all these knives, and they're great knives. But you're going to pay $200-$300, sometimes even more, for one of those knives. You're not going to get as good a quality for the money as you're going to get if you buy a Scallywag Tactical. I've had this knife over a year, and I've never put a sharpening stone on it. It's still, if I dropped it and tried to catch it like an idiot again, it'd still cut me just like it did the first, or it wasn't this one actually, it was my Jolly Roger, but still same principle. Sharp, 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 as Camo Dad just said. And as Doc and I like to say, they'll cut you three ways: long, deep, and continuous.
And
So
another great reason to have a Dark Angel medical kit on hand.
what he said. Yeah. So visit Scallywag Tactical. Check out their blemish blade section.
They just added a bunch of knives to the blemish blade section for the year end.
They did. This knife came off the blemish blades. Not a thing in the world wrong with it. A lot of times it's just a box. We've said it before. DA finally found one that had a small scratch on it. That's, since we've been talking about this, that's of all of us that have Scallywag Tactical, that's the only time we've found something actually be wrong with the knife. And it's not even.
And I had to look for it.
Yeah, and it's not even that there's anything wrong with it. It's just it's a scratch in the finish, and Craig's not going to sell it as a brand new knife. So find you a knife on the blemish blade section, get you a good deal. Then when you're at checkout, hit code DA Roberts 10, give yourself an extra 10% off of that. Let them know we sent you, and that's all I got to say about that.
And our third affiliate is Ken Brockover, the tactical midget himself, over at brockblades.com. Ken's a great guy, career cop, retired now, but he makes custom knives in the shop behind his house. And every one of these are handmade, hand forged, all done. Every piece, every step of the way is done by hand. And if you know somebody that's an outdoorsman, and whether they go out hunting cryptids or hunting Bambi, hunters and fishermen as well appreciate a good quality knife. And, the gift of a custom blade is something that'll be treasured. And these aren't meant to be just set on a shelf and looked at. These are full usable utility blades. And they are sharp. Ken makes a heck of a product. And, I know, if you've got a hunter in your life or a fisherman or first responder or somebody that's been in the military, a custom blade with custom engraving, which he can do, is something that would be very treasured indeed. So check out brockblades.com. And if you purchase a blade that's already made on the website, use discount code Cryptid10 on your order for 10% off. And if you order a custom blade, when you're describing the custom, make sure you mention that you heard about brockblades.com from here on the show, and he'll still make sure you get the 10% off even on the custom blades. So definitely check out Brock Blades and let them know we sent you. And I think you're really going to enjoy the product, because those handmade blades are just absolutely beautiful. Miss Naoma, why don't you tell us about your channel?
Well, I have 3 channels right now. I have my YouTube channel where you can hear a lot of the stories that I talked about tonight, and a few others besides. I like to talk cryptids. I like to talk paranormal, UFOs, strange events, strange people. Anything, if it's eerie, creepy, or crawls into bed with me the night before last, I'll probably talk about it. I also have 2 podcasts. One is my Neoma Finn Opened It Out podcast, same name as my YouTube channel. And my son and I have just started another podcast called Snark Fin Soup, where we just talk, just a conversation between the 2 of us about a lot of the things I talk about on my YouTube channel and a lot of the things we talk about here. That's
How did you
it.
come up with the name Snark Fin Soup?
Well, have you ever read Lewis Carroll's The Hunting of the Snark?
Mm-hmm.
That is where the concatenated order of the Hoo-Hoo got their title, the Snark, which is the leader of their organization. Yeah, shake your head, Robbie. I know. And
the last time we started talking about who's, the chat went nuts.
I know. And it just happens to be one of my favorite poems. And I've gotten such a reputation for being a bit snarky lately.
No.
That it just seemed like the right name, Snark Fin Soup. So I'm the Queen Snark, as a lot of people are calling me these days. There's a line, there's a stanza from that poem that I really do love. It goes, I'm going to mess it up. I told you in German, I told you in Dutch, I told you in Hebrew and Greek, but I wholly forgot, and it vexes me much that English is what you speak. And so we try really hard to speak English and get our point across on Snark Fin Soup.
Just remember, some are boojums.
That's right. Some are. The poor guy at the end, the butcher. No,
Mhm.
was he the one that got eaten by the boojum? Yeah,
Summer boojums.
that's right. Summer boojums. So that's pretty much it.
Robbie, you want to talk a little bit about what's really out there?
Yep. Johnny and I have returned. We don't have the episode that we recorded out yet because we've got a few little secrets and surprises that are going to not predate but precede the actual show. But Johnny and I have recorded another show, and we would have recorded a second one, but we got a certain piece of equipment that is got up and walked off apparently, so we had to order another one. It's a very minor piece of equipment, but we couldn't record with that, so we'll have it
It's
up.
always the absolute most important critical thing is something that costs $4, but you have to have it.
Yep, that's pretty much what it was because Tyler spent most of the night looking for that, but apparently it grew legs and walked off, so as things do. Anyway,
I bet you find it in Cap's cage.
no, it's up at Market at the Mill. So yeah, if it was here, that's exactly the place that I would look for it, is in the boys' room. Because if I'm missing something, it's probably in there. Bucky's done ate about 12 collars and a pool stick. And see, not you, Naomi. We get off track anyway. I'm supposed to be talking about what's really out there, and I'm talking about Cap and Bucky. Anyway, we just did the episode that we just recorded. Actually, it's a pretty good episode. We did talking about Dogman and the Super Soldier program. So Johnny and I kind of dipped our toes off in that. We've had a few shows about Dogman and stuff like that, but we never had an actual specific show about the Super Soldier program that from all of, not just the American version of it, but we kind of dove into the whole world type thing of the programs that we've known about. And we got a show coming out about vampires. So
Vampers.
Them vampers. As Doc is fond of saying, Count Docula. But yeah, we're back and recording. So check us out, the Ex Machina Light.
Well, folks, we're at the part of the show where I like to mention something that's very near and dear to me, and that's the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. We owe these men and women a debt we can never repay. And if you know anyone that's a first responder or a veteran or still even active duty, or worked as a first responder in any capacity, reach out to those folks, because these folks that have put on a uniform to protect us, be that at home or abroad, they've seen and done things that haunt them. And your voice might be what pulls them back off the edge. 22 a day is entirely too many. You can go to the Till Valhalla Project to support the 22 a Day Foundation. You can go to the Officer Down Memorial page. ODMP has a listing of all officers that we've lost, both in the line of duty and in other causes, suicide being one of them. And you can see the numbers, and they're staggering. We lose a lot of men and women that just the media does not cover. They don't talk about it. They don't mention it. And that's really, to me, that's the saddest thing. We put more emphasis on somebody that protects a ball for a living than we do the people that protect our country. And that's just absolutely sad to me. But if you want to support the 22 a Day Foundation, look up the Till Valhalla Project. They're one of the charities that I really do endorse. Because so much of the money actually goes to the veterans to get service animals, to get prosthetic limbs, to get them therapy when they need it, when the VA drops the freaking ball. But the Till Valhalla Project, like 95% of what they take in goes to the veterans. A lot of these bigger charities don't do that. You give them $100, less than $1 of it actually gets to the veterans. The rest of it goes to salaries. The Till Valhalla Project is veterans that are helping veterans, and I 100% support these guys. Just an absolute treasure trove. In fact, this shirt that I've got that I'm wearing right there. It says "Never forget we live among giants." The back's got another big logo on it, but this is one of the T-shirts they sell to raise money to help veterans charities. And I got a whole bunch of these shirts, and I've got some of their tumblers, and I'm very proud to give them my support. 22 a day is entirely too many, folks, and let's get that number down to 0. And again, reach out to your first responder, your veteran friends, your active duty friends, people that are still in uniform. Let them know you're thinking about them, because that kind word, that hey, I was thinking about you, you want to go grab a beer, might be the text that keeps them off the ledge. That one phone call where you're like, hey, I was thinking about you, you want to grab a beer, that might be what gives them the focus to not lose the fight to the demons. And we've all had our rough phases. Robbie's a career first responder. I was a career first responder. Doc was in the military, and he's worked as a first responder. Steve is a first responder. We've all seen horrible things, and sometimes you can only really talk about those kind of demons with somebody that's had similar experiences. So if you're a veteran, and if you're a first responder, and others that are struggling, reach out to them. Let them know you're thinking about them, because sometimes, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's true. Sometimes, somebody who's been a warrior for too long, only another warrior can reach them. And it's a sad state of affairs, because a lot of these guys don't want to talk to therapists. They really don't, because they feel like they're just talking to somebody who can't have possibly any inkling of what we've really gone through. So it's really tough for some of these folks to reach out for a therapist or ask for help. So just let them know you're there. Let them know that you're there for them. And if they ever need to talk, don't try to make them talk, because that will probably not work out well. But let them know if they do need to talk, that you're there, and be there for them and support them in any way you can. Because 22 a day is entirely too many. So that leads me to our closing toast. You guys have heard me do it 1,000 times, and I'm going to do it again. And hopefully I can actually do it this time without getting a little misty.
You want to make the announcement about Saturday night before you?
Oh, yeah, we probably should. There will not be a show Saturday night, because Robbie and I are going to be working with a documentary crew, filming a documentary which will hopefully air sometime in the spring. We'll let you guys know who it's with and the name of the documentary when that gets closer to time to release, because right now we can't really talk about it. I can tell you that much: we are going to be with a film crew this weekend. That's why Robbie's coming to Missouri, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So Doc was going to join us, but he's not going to be able to make it, unfortunately. So again, sorry, no show on Saturday, but we will be back next Wednesday with a surprise guest. I don't want to announce it just yet. I don't want to jinx it, but we are going to have a pretty good named guest. I think you guys are really going to like it. So hopefully we will see you guys next Wednesday, and let's celebrate this with the final toast. The song is called "A Parting Glass," and it's across the world. Irish pubs always play this song at the end of the night, because it's lifting a glass to say goodbye. But it's also a song about lifting a glass to say goodbye, and not just to the bar patrons, because the lyrics are very, very poignant. And if you've never heard the song, I recommend going on YouTube and putting in "The Parting Glass." And I've never heard a bad version. Even the Ed Sheeran version is really pretty good. But it's just a beautiful song. And I'll leave you guys with this quote tonight. "But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.